Hey, it's James here, and I want to welcome you back to Born to Climb. Today is a solo episode, and let's go ahead and jump in. So it's a big week for me. It's a big week for our company as my new book comes out, Call to Climb, which is a story to find your path, conquer your fears, and fulfill your destiny. So I'm really excited about it because, well, to be honest, it's like nothing I've ever done before. So if you're familiar with my first book, 9 Minutes on Monday, it's very corporate leadership-y, do the 5 this and the 7 things this. And not that that's a bad thing. It's very prescriptive and been helpful for a lot of people. The Call to Climb is definitely a lot more of a spiritual book. And so I'll get into that in just a moment. But I first want to talk a little bit about big goals in your life. And if I were to ask you right now, what's a big goal for you? What would you say? Maybe it's saving a certain amount for retirement. Maybe it's launching a company. Maybe it's writing a book. I'll get to that in a moment. Maybe it's climbing the 7 summits. Maybe it's getting to a certain country. But what's a big goal? And when I say big goal, I'm talking about one that takes a while to get there. I remember when I used to go into bookstores back when I was, my 20s. And for whatever reason, I just used to have this thought like, wouldn't it be cool to have a book in a bookstore? And for me, I just thought that would be a dream. That would be amazing. Now, I know not everyone thinks like this, and I don't even know why I thought like it. Maybe it was an ego thing, I'm not sure. But I just thought that would just be a great feeling of accomplishment. And I had that feeling for years and years and years. And then when I started my own company, a lot of my colleagues were writing books, and I thought, I should do that. And then every time I went into a bookstore, it was more haunting than inspiring. Like, you still don't have a book in here. And I think part of the reason I'd never written one is because I just didn't believe I was a strong writer. In fact, I don't even know that I am a strong writer. I think probably not. I think I'm a good storyteller. And what I did, though, one day is I got on stage at HR conference. And this was an HR conference that I wasn't getting paid to speak at. I don't know how many conferences I'd knocked on the doors, right, to get on the stage, but I wasn't being paid. But I had one of those moments where I thought, I'm just going to tell this audience that I have a book coming out in October, and it was like June. Of course, I hadn't even started. I'm going to just tell them I have a book coming out, and that'll force me to do it, right? One of those, tell all your friends you're doing it, and then it's going to make you do it, right? So I get up, and at the end of my speech, I put this slide up, and I said, my book is coming out in October. If you want to know more about it, I can't remember what I honestly, I can't even remember what I said. But it just so happened that sitting in the front row was the senior editor for McGraw-Hill, and his name was Knox. He came up to me after, introduced himself, handed me his card, and he said, so tell me about your book. And I said, I'm just going to self-publish it. And he goes, well, we'd be interested in having a look. So, of course, I left that on cloud 9. I had never considered publishing my book with a publisher because you just hear all these stories of people getting rejected and like the Chicken Soup for the Soul guys. I mean, how many times did they get rejected? They have this story, I don't know, like 100 times. I didn't even know there's 100 publishers out there. But at the same time, I don't know that I can handle 100 rejections. I don't know that I can handle 5 rejections, right? So I just never sent that out. And again, I just didn't believe I was a strong writer. So when I left that day, I was super excited. At the same time, I felt a sense of dread, like, oh, now I have to write this book. And now if I am going to get rejected, it's going to come. So I did get to work and I wrote the book. It was a lot of sitting in a coffee shop and coming back to it. I asked my mother to clean up the writing because I was just a lazy writer, so I'd never bothered paying attention to how to structure a sentence. So my poor mother had to do so much editing. Well, anyways, I finally get this manuscript done, and I sent it into McGraw-Hill, and then nothing. And a few months go by, nothing. And so it's not like I'd got a rejection. I just didn't hear anything. So finally, I emailed Knox and I just said, you know what, I'm just going to self-publish it because this is for my business, so I'm going to get this out. And he was like, yeah, okay, great. It was kind of a rejection, right? So I go ahead and I self-publish this book and I start selling it. And then I sent the self-published version to McGraw-Hill maybe 6 months later. and wrote something creative in the beginning in the page for them. And then maybe 30 days later, I get a call from Knox. I still remember it was Tuesday morning. I was in my office and he calls and he says, "Hey, I got some good news. We're going to purchase the rights to your book, 9 Minutes on Monday." And the first question out of my mouth was, "Did you even read it?" That was my question. Did you even read it? And he just laughed. He said, "Of course we read it, right? Well, of course, they're not going to just publish some book that they hadn't read." But the question said more about what I thought of what I'd created, right? The work. Like, obviously, had you read this book, you would know that it sucked and that I suck as a writer and you wouldn't be publishing it. So anyways, they ended up publishing it, and that was a cool moment. In fact, I remember the day that the book got published. It was September 12th. I went to a local Barnes & Noble. I walked into the business leadership section and searched, and down near the bottom where the R's were, there was my book, 9 Minutes on Monday. In fact, when I saw it, I didn't believe it at first. I was like, no way. I walked away, and then I came back just to see if it was still there, like a reality check, and it was. And so that was a cool moment for me. But the lessons I learned in that is that consistent action is more important than confidence in whatever dream you have. Because I can't think of a person actually who doesn't struggle a little bit with, imposter syndrome or feeling like they're not good enough to do something. And so what trumps that? I mean, you can meditate about that, and you can deal with your subconscious, and all those things are good things. I'm not saying that that's not a way to go, but there's also something about just take another step, right? Like, let's use the mountain metaphor because I like that. If there's this big mountain you want to climb and you're not sure you can do it, but I can just take a step, and you just keep taking steps, well, eventually you get there. And this is why I say that consistent action is more important than confidence. Honestly, let's talk about, being a good writer. Do I think I'm a good writer? I actually don't think I'm a good writer. I think I'm a good storyteller. I think I'm a great storyteller, actually. I don't think I'm a good writer. Like, if there was a writer's convention and I walked in, I would feel like I would go sit at the back. Like, I just never really see myself that way. Again, that's my thing, but I just don't. But yet I'm about to have a second book out. So what's more important, feeling like a writer and having no books, or not sure if you're a good writer or not, but just writing? And whatever your big goal is, there's going to probably be some doubt. If there's no doubt, then maybe the goal's not big enough. Well, what's going to get you there? Feeling confident, of course, is a good thing, but consistent action is more important. And so what do you need to do to set yourself up to take consistent action on that goal? Because that's what's going to get you there. The other thing that I think I've learned in this process is that when you pound on enough doors, one of them finally opens. And I mean, I could write another book about just things that didn't work. Like, I've had so many things fail, so many things fall short and not work. And I've just lost track over time of just how many things I try. But if there's an opportunity, I try to take it. So when I look at this entire journey, started because I was trying to speak on conferences. And I remember applying to speak at this HR conference called SHRM. And they emailed me back and said, "Hey, we'd like to have you speak at the conference, but we don't pay." And I remember when they sent me that email, and I thought, well, I'm not going then. Like, I'm not flying to San Diego to speak at your conference for free. But I had no idea who I was about to turn down, right? And this is the largest HR conference in the world. So once I started to get an idea, I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So I went down, and then I did it, and I did a great job. And then I applied another year, and they had me back. And I applied another year, and they had me back. Well, it was on one of those they had me back years that I got up on stage and said, "Hey, I'm writing a book," and the editor of McGraw-Hill was in the front row. So while I don't have the chicken soup for the soul story of we got rejected by 100 times, my story's different. The rejections came in different ways. All the conferences that said no, right? And just taking chances and putting things out there, even though you don't know if it's going to work or not. And I would say another door that came from this is after they published 9 Minutes on Monday, Knox eventually left McGraw-Hill. He went on to a different opportunity, and someone took his place, and it was a woman named Cheryl Segura. And one time I had to go to New York to speak at an event, and I called her up and I said, hey, I'll be in New York. Did you want to at least meet face to face? And she said, yeah, that would be great. So I went to the McGraw-Hill office. We went down and we just grabbed a coffee really quick. It was maybe like 45 minutes. It was just this face-to-face moment, right? There was no reason in some ways for it. I didn't have another book I was writing or pitching, but it was just to make a connection with the person who took over for Knox. Well, that connection over the years would be her emailing me, say, hey, do you have another book you'd like to write? And I would usually be like, no. The reality was I did have another book I wanted to write, but I wanted to write it myself. I didn't want to go through a publisher, and I'll get to that in a moment. But it was Cheryl who eventually left McGraw, went to Wiley, and she said, hey, do you have a book? And then I said, well, I have this one book, but I don't know that I want to submit a proposal. And she goes, no, I'll just do it. And so I did, and then that's where this came from. So that was a year ago. But I think had I not called her the one day and said, hey, I'll be in town, do you want to grab coffee? And so that created that extra connection from a networking perspective. And this ties into the other point I've learned about working with others versus going it alone. And the reason that I wanted to not go with a publisher with The Call to Climb originally was because when you write a book, you actually don't make much money from a book. Like you might make $1.50, maybe $2 from each book, which means you got to sell a lot of books to make it worth it. Most books, I can't remember what the number is. Most books don't sell more than, like 5,000 copies or something. So imagine someone writes a book, they take a long time to do it, and they get, $7,000, $8,000 for it. It's not worth it from an hour per dollar perspective, right? It's not worth it from that perspective. So I thought, okay, I'm going to self-publish a book because then I can make $7, $8, $9 every book. But the problem is, when you have a really big goal, at least for me, I need some extra accountability to get it done. And so 12 years went by with the idea for The Call to Climb, but there was no book because I was going to do it on my own. Once I decided, okay, I'll go ahead and do this with Wiley, then they gave me a contract, I signed the contract, and then they gave me a deadline, 2 deadlines. You have to have the first half of the book done in 8 weeks, and then the next half done in the next 8 weeks. And suddenly I was like, wait, what? Oh my goodness. I went to this one cafe close to my house from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. every day. It just became a ritual, right, for 2 hours. It was 2 hours because this cafe has a Wi-Fi limit. So when you pay for your coffee, you get this little code. You only have 2 hours. So I was like, all right, I only got 2 hours. And I just wrote for 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, because I have my company to run. So I can't just sit there all day writing like some writers get to do. And I got to pay the bills, right? So working my job. So I'm writing 2 hours a day, 2 hours a day. And then the deadline's approaching, and that's when I had to take a week off, and I just went and wrote for 1 solid week just to meet the first deadline. Rinse and repeat for the second deadline. I wrote 2 hours a day, but then the week before I had to take the week off and just write all week. But the point is, the book got done, and the book never would have got done on my own. So they say in the publishing world, if you want to make money on a book, publish it yourself. If you want the book to get a broader exposure, okay, get a publisher to publish it. And so, and if you're listening to this, you can't see because I have the book in my hand here, but you can always catch these on YouTube. So you can find that in the show notes. But the book is here because I decided to partner with somebody, which always means giving away something, right? Anytime you're in a partnership. And again, if I had just been like, no, I want to make more money on the book, then there's no book. But if I'm willing to give away some things, and what did they do for me in exchange? Well, they provided a structure for me to get this done. And so let's go back to thinking about you again and your big goals. What can you do with your biggest goals to create a structure or to have more people involved in it so that you're not doing it alone, but you also have to get it done, right? That there's actual deadlines that people are counting on. In fact, they told me, like, if you miss this deadline by a certain amount of time, we might just cancel the project. And after you've put in like weeks and weeks and weeks, you're like, well, I don't want that to happen. Or after they've given you a payment advance, you're like, I don't have to give that back, right? Like, I've already spent that on stuff, so I don't want to have to come up with the money to pay them back. So I better get it done. So there's a power of working with others rather than just doing things on your own. And the last lesson I'll share out of this is that I think there's a certain timing in our lives that we have to trust. And what most people don't know is I first pitched the idea of the Call to Climb back in 2015, 10 years ago. I first pitched the idea to McGraw-Hill. They said no. Then I pitched it to Wiley, who said no, even though now they're the ones that said yes. I pitched it to them and they said no. And when I think back now, I'm so glad they said no. Because to me, the idea is really unique. It's definitely not like any idea of a story that I've read out there. But the problem was with the idea 10 years ago, it was so much less developed, meaning it was more prescriptive. It was sort of like the leadership book. Here's the 5 things of this and the 7 things of this and the 8 things you need to do in order to do this. And you know what happened in the 10 years between it getting rejected and today? A whole lot more suffering in my life, a whole lot more hard times, a whole lot more setbacks, and we're talking major ones. And yet through all that suffering and tough times, that forced me to process that, some of that stuff ended up deepening the story, deepening the book. And I want to say this, that, everyone goes through tough times. Everyone has something that this is not easy, right? But your suffering is like a salve for others. Like your suffering is able to produce things that others enjoy. It's a little bit like somebody goes through a tough time, maybe a heartbreak or a breakup, and then they write an amazing song that now comforts millions of other people who are heartbroken, right? But that song would not exist without the suffering. The suffering, in a sense, helped give birth to it. And I would say the same is true for this book, is that without a certain level of suffering, this book wouldn't exist, at least in the form that it does. So remember, I really believe there is a timing in life. Like now, looking back, I'm so glad that this didn't happen 10 years ago. And I think it's happening at just the right time for me. And I think the message is coming out at just the right time for a whole bunch of people who are going to read it. And yeah, that's why I'm excited about it. But I wanted to share this solo episode just because, number one, the book comes out here actually today, and I'm super thrilled about it. And I hope you'll pick up a copy. But also I wanted to share some of the lessons I've learned through it, right? This idea of, have a big goal in your life. If you don't have a big goal, think, what is it that you want? What do you want to accomplish? And then take consistent action. And remember, whether you think you're good or not good, it's almost irrelevant. It's like, just climb. Pound on enough doors. Eventually, something opens that maybe you wouldn't predict. Like, would I predict that applying at all these conferences would end up leading down a road where here the second book comes out? Yet, that's what happened. The power of working with others and not trying to do everything yourself, and then trusting. There's a timing in your life. Don't get so frustrated when things haven't happened for you yet. Just keep climbing and trust that good things are on their way. So, wanted to share that. Hey, thanks for being part of this solo climb with me today. I hope you can pick up a copy of the book, The Call to Climb. You will find it in the link in the show notes, or you can go to any major online retailer like Barnes & Noble or Amazon or Indigo if you're up in Canada. And you can also go to the website, iwillclimb.com. So anyways, that's it for this episode, and thanks for tuning in.